The U.S. and Iran are trading yet more strikes after President Trump said the ceasefire is over. U.S. Central Command says it hit about 90 targets inside Iran. That includes missile storage sites and air defense systems. This is the second consecutive night of attacks. And there you're hearing sirens from overnight. That was heard across the Middle East as Iran hit back. Tehran says it targeted U.S. bases in Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar. Now, despite all this, President Trump insists Iran wants to talk. Listen to what he had to say on his way home from the NATO summit overnight.
They have very little left, and they want to make a deal so badly. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal.
And on the way home from the NATO summit, President Trump flew out of Turkey on the old Air Force One instead of the new Qatari gifted plane that he arrived in. We'll dig into why that took place in just a few minutes with our Olivia Rinaldi, so stay close for that. But first, let's jump to CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio joining us from our London bureau with more on the bigger picture. Good morning, Ramy. Tell us more about these U.S. strikes on Iranian targets and the response.
Absolutely, Errol. Good morning. Well, last night President Trump said that if the U.S. struck again, it will get much worse. And then about half an hour or so right after that, we started getting reports from Iran of explosions in various parts of the country, some coming out of the southeast, in airports, in a port city on the Strait of Hormuz, and then in the northeast, a railway bridge that's crucial because it connects Iran to Russia as well as to China. And then a couple hours later, we got the other news that you mentioned. Iran's retaliation started. That was against American military assets in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar. They sounded air raid sirens, warned of rockets and drones, and Iran later said that it targeted 2 U.S. bases in Kuwait, including Patriot missile systems, and 2 bases in Bahrain, including a fuel storage site. And if that wasn't all, actually in just the past couple hours, Errol, Iran reported several more explosions, but in another part of the country, in Bushehr province. This is important because it's the home of Iran's only nuclear power plant. And as this is all happening, remember, this is against the backdrop of the final day of the funeral of the late Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was assassinated back on February 28th in a U.S.-Israeli strike then. So a lot of things happening here. This morning, CENTCOM issued a statement saying that it hit more than 90 targets in Iran, on top of the more than 80 just the day before. Same things, air defense systems, coastal surveillance sites. Iran, for its part, the health ministry said that people have been killed and people have died, more than a dozen killed here, and nearly 80 people have been injured.
And at about this time yesterday, Ramy, you were saying, I think Brent crude prices had jumped 5%. How has all this continued fighting impacted oil prices, considering the Strait of Hormuz isn't seeing traffic?
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at the price of Brent crude right now, it is almost at $79 a barrel, still rising this morning because of this second day of strikes. To compare this to 2 days ago, before all this back and forth happened, it was at $72. But see, look on the right-hand side of your screen there. We're pipping over $78 a barrel, which is what we saw just yesterday. And we had been at pretty much a low around June 23rd, onwards over the past few weeks, hitting as low as $72. But again, rising back up. I spoke with one of the world's really top energy experts, Dr. Amrita Sen at Energy Aspects, just a couple hours ago, and she told me if the Strait of Hormuz closes down again, worst case scenario here, for a month or more, then we should expect oil could jump to $90, maybe even $100 a barrel. Here's more.
We're not expecting things to go back to March, April levels, I would say. That's really when everything was frozen. Very little was moving. But since then, U.S. Navy has been escorting ships. And we've also seen some of the other countries in the region, UAE, for instance, with their own naval fleet, do a lot of dark transit. So what that means is that these ships switch off their AIS and then they're transiting oil.
If the Strait of Hormuz closes again, worst case scenario, but what is your expectation for the price of oil?
When we started the conflict, we had a good buffer. Basically, we'd built up a lot of inventories last year and in the first quarter. So we had about, 400 million barrels, give or take, of inventories that we could have run down. We've done that now. We've even depleted, in the US, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at its lowest ever, really. Overall, US crude oil stocks are at their lowest since 1985. And US refining is 4.5 million barrels per day higher than then. So you can imagine just overall, right? Governments have stepped in to help. US has, Japan has, Europe has. But we can't ignore the fact that stocks everywhere are very, very low. So you just do not have that buffer anymore.
Yeah, and she pointed out that the price of U.S. gas rose overnight, $3.84 for the average gallon regular. And she said, don't expect to see it fall below $3 a gallon into next year. Basically, that big three, get used to it. Errol.
All right, Ramy Inocencio with that comprehensive update in London. Ramy, thanks.